Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause, joined by John McMullen, the number one Eagles beat reporter in town. Give him a follow on X at JF McMullen. Give me a follow at Real Zander. It's with a Z, at Real Zander. Thanks, everybody, for checking in this morning. Got a quick turnaround week this week on Birds 365 as the Eagles are preparing for another NFC opponent, and this time a much more meaningful game, which could potentially determine the NFC East, or at least play a big part in that. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Tuesday morning, my man?
Doing well. Yeah, short week. Kind of glad, as I mentioned, like to turn the page quickly off a pretty meaningless game. So I think we could do that pretty quickly. And important game. What more? I don't like it being on a Thursday. I talked about that. I just think it's, I asked Nick Sirianni that yesterday about the game prep and how things change from a normal week. And, this is a big game, and it'd be nice to see these two teams with a full week to prepare, but you don't get to see that. They both have the same hurdles, so it's not going to affect one or the other, but it'd be nice to see it in a more traditional environment, and have the Cowboys-Eagles nonsense on Thursday night, kind of flip it. But you got to do what you got to do, and they'll do their best to prepare. I'm sure Washington is feeling the same way. And we'll see how it shakes out. But, one thing, I think one of the underreported stories of the Eagles so far in their good start is health, man.
Yeah.
Every week they're healthier than their opponent. And the same holds true. And I know some people saw the estimated injury report, and it's an estimation. Nobody's practicing this week.
Right.
The Eagles aren't practicing. They'll have a walkthrough today at 4 p.m, but full practices, you can't. So, Nakobe Dean, Dallas Goedert, Darius Slay, Devonta Smith were the players that were estimated as not participating. And we'll get a clearer picture today on what's real and what isn't. I remind you of last week during the Wednesday injury report, a bunch of people are on there. And then Thursday, everybody was practicing. So it was just managing people through the week. And we'll see what that looks like on the short week. The best news is Jordan Mailata. They open his practice window, and Nick is rarely, above board with injuries, and says, hey, if he's ready to go, he's going to play. And that's a little bit of a surprise to me because, again, you don't practice this week, so he's not going to get a chance to practice after being out a month. And you have the mini bye, and you would think from a logical standpoint, well, let's give him the extra couple days, plus you get a full practice next week, and he returns against the Rams, who, by the way, looked awful last night. If anybody saw that game. So that's not looking as daunting. A week-to-week league, though, and who knows where they are at that point. But the health overall, compared to their opposition over the last couple of weeks, has been pretty good. And Washington's estimated injury report, was much more significant. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 people on it. So Marshawn Lattimore, which was a big acquisition, he didn't practice because of a hamstring. Their kicker's not practicing because of a hip injury. And a bunch of guys are limited, bunch of key guys. Brian Robinson, their running back, is hamstring. And Andrew Wiley, who's one of their tackles. You might remember him from Super Bowl fame with the Chiefs. He's dealing with a shoulder. Brandon Coleman's another offensive lineman's dealing with a shoulder. Cornelius Lucas, an ankle. So they're banged up, more banged up than the Eagles.
Yeah, man. It's a good point by you. We haven't talked about it much, but we're going into week 11 here. And if assuming Jordan Mailata is back for a second, which it does seem like he's going to be, the whole team is healthy. Is there anybody out?
Well, we got to see. I mean, the Dallas Goddard. Please don't tweet me with he's made of glass. I'm just going to mute you. I'm telling you that right now. So he didn't practice with an ankle, nothing to do with his original hamstring injury where he missed the 3 games. Nakobe Dean didn't practice. Again, this is all an estimation with a groin. Slay, ankle, again, not the knee. This is a new injury. Ankle, Devonta Smith with a hamstring. Now, Devonta was one of those guys. He was dealing with that last week. He was one of those guys who didn't practice on Wednesday, and he was back by Thursday. So they're just trying to manage him. So hopefully nothing serious from his standpoint. But the other guys, that's all new. That's all coming out of the game. So you have to see if any of those injuries are somewhat serious. And remember, I mean, you're going Sunday to Thursday. It's not like Sunday to Sunday.
Right.
So a lot of guys weren't ready by Thursday, but they're ready by Sunday. That might not be the case this week.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it's advantage Eagles here. Clearly, when you talk about the off the football field stuff, obviously both have a short week with Sunday games. But as our man Kenny P in the chat points out, Washington had a very physical opponent on Sunday in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Eagles kind of were able to, I don't want to say skate by, but basically skate by the Cowboys.
They skated by, you can say.
Advantage Eagles there, Johnny Mac. I mean, coming into a Thursday game, you hear people talk about the Dan Campbell hangover a lot, where Detroit's such a physical team. It's hard to play the next week after you play them. I think there could be a little bit of that here this Thursday night.
More what the Eagles want. I mean, everything fell exactly like the Eagles wanted. They blew them out. They got to rest their starters. But, you know, the one, Nakobe, if people notice from the snap counts, Oren Burks was in a little bit earlier than the rest of the backups, and that was for Nakobe with the groin injury. So that's the one I'll have a keen eye on today. And Oren would be the starter if Nakobe is not ready to go. So we'll see how that shakes out today, but very difficult to get back on a short week if there's anything of any significance. So there are a couple issues, but again, overall, and there have been a couple issues overall, most notably AJ Brown. This team is 6-0 with AJ Brown.
Yep.
He missed 3 games. Jordan obviously has been on injured reserve for 4 games. Dallas missed 3 games. There's been injuries, but not
nothing season
altering.
Exactly.
And that, you know, hasn't been the case for a lot of other teams.
No doubt, and that should be an advantage for the Eagles this Thursday night. John, you spoke with Nick Sirianni yesterday. You're set to speak to Jalen Hurts a little bit today, and I believe the coordinators today, correct?
Yeah, Vic and Kellen today.
Anything you took away from what Nick had to say yesterday, and then just set the stage on what's going on today? I know you mentioned it's a walkthrough down at NovaCare Complex today.
You know, I was mainly interested, as I said, I asked him about the short week and that kind of stuff, and he gave a pretty good answer. And he admitted these games are a pain in the ass from not only a preparation perspective, and that's a direct quote, pain in the ass, not only from a preparation perspective, but also from a player perspective and trying to get up. This is not a sport designed to play twice in 5 days.
No, it's not.
It's not. And you got to play twice in 5 days. So a lot of it is, you know, getting the players ready from a physical standpoint, and then you sort of resort, I call them DNA games, because you don't have as much time to game plan and prepare from that perspective. And even if you did, now Nick said the coaches, you know, do the same amount of work, and it's really difficult on them, but that might even be the case. But the point is, you don't have the time to impart it to the players, so you have to sort of scale back to what you are. So, And that's why I say, to me, it's disappointing that these two teams don't have a full week of preparation, because then you have the full game planning experience where they're actually trying to target where they want to target on a particular team. And you get a better feel for what the teams are and where they are and what's going on. In this instance, it's about the Eagles will default to what they do well. Washington will default to what they do well. And it's sort of that DNA game, as opposed to being really specialized
Right.
to your opponent. I think that's the difference with all Thursday games, not just this game, all Thursday games. That's how everyone kind of handles it. And I think that'll be the case here. You just don't have the time. I mean, think about it. Thursday to Sunday, that's a significant amount of time when it comes to, typically on a typical Sunday week, Thursday is the biggest practice of the week this time of year.
Right. I mean, we've already seen several times this year where the injury report changes from Thursday to Friday or even Friday to Saturday.
Well, Wednesday's, the big one, and that's where they manage guys. And then Thursday, and they scale back to a glorified walkthrough on Wednesday. We'll see if that continues. They do that every year. This is a little bit early, but they did it last week. And that'll certainly show up later in the season. Thursday becomes the biggest practice day of the week. Practice on Friday. You have walkthrough on Saturday, situational meetings on Saturday, and then you play the game on Sunday. All of that's gone. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's all gone. There's no way you can impart all that information to the players who are in Washington, and this would set Jody off, our old buddy Jody McDonald. They did have a walkthrough on Monday, which the Eagles don't. They never will, and they don't. I mean, they just played on Sunday. They're having a walkthrough on Monday. It's absurd. But again, each team has the same hurdles they have to overcome, and Washington has to travel, at least for their perspective. It's not a long trip, obviously. But, Nick has mentioned, hey, on these games, it's always better to be home. So that's an advantage too. And the biggest advantage, look, Washington's maybe the best story in the NFL this season, considering where they've been, but the Eagles are still better.
Agreed.
The Eagles are a better football team. So, but they're dangerous. They're dangerous. And the Eagles haven't seen a dangerous team since Cincinnati, or a team that, could probably, if they played well, could probably give them a game. This is a dangerous team. So it shifts a little bit from that perspective.
Yeah, good stuff there, Johnny Mac. I want to thank everybody for being here this morning. Got a quick week, everybody, with the Thursday night game coming up as we begin to preview that. Couple good topics for Johnny Mac and I today. No guests today, so we'll have an opened up hour number 2. If you guys drop in some super chats, I will get to each and every single one of them. We appreciate all the support. Prince, Abe, Real Zeal, Jason 18, good to see everybody in the chat. Quan, good to see you, Quan. Real Zeal, Crowley, good to see everybody in the chat. Make sure you guys hit that like button for us. We've been killing it on the likes on Birds 365, so thank you guys for the support in that. John, with the no preparation, it makes me wonder, and I know it's obviously it's lesser. It's a disadvantage for both teams to not have the full week of preparation. But trying to find the silver lining in it as a spectator of the game, it almost takes out any of the cutesy stuff, and it's like, go do what you do best in this game, and the better team will prevail. Is any of that sentiment correct, or does it just make for worse football?
Well, I think it makes for worse football, but no, that sentiment is incorrect. I mean, it makes for worse football because you can't practice at all, and generally you're not as sharp, and your body hasn't recovered typically the way it would. That's a big part of it as well. But yeah, the scaling back of the cutesy stuff, as you call it, that's probably a positive.
Yeah, right.
A lot of these coaches look at me and, boy, I see that so many times where it's, 3rd and 1, and I saw a reverse, and it's like you lose 8 yards, and it's like, come on, dude, what
Yeah.
you're giving an opportunity for the other team. Maybe it hits, and that's why coaches do it. They have egos like everybody else. Maybe it hits, and everybody says, "Wow, what a great coach." And when it doesn't hit, you know, it looks bad. But if you're running a lot of trick plays, that's pretty good signal that you're not very good. There's exceptions. Ben Johnson runs a lot of nonsense, but and that's the best team in football, at least right now. So there's exceptions. But overall, if you're running a lot of trick plays, it's probably you don't have confidence. And let's be honest with the Eagles, it seems they do this every year. They start and they want to get Jalen Hurts up to that elite level status, and they go, oh, they're having some problems, and they scale back and say, hey, look at our offensive line. Let's ride those guys.
Right.
It seems to happen every year, to be honest. And then they ride those guys and they get cooking. And then Jalen gets more confidence and they start making plays and they turn into a good team. That happened in 21. That happened in 22. That's happening this year. Last year was the anomaly. They were just good early and fell apart late. But overall, that's been the way it's kind of gone.
Yeah. Preparation time, not a perfect indicator of how good a football game will be. John, you remember last Thursday night, as Zeal brings up in the chat, pretty damn good game last Thursday with the Bengals and the Ravens, and then the Monday night game when they all had an extra day to prepare. Pretty damn ugly one to watch. So we'll see how the game goes on Thursday night. John, you mentioned coaching there. How much of an advantage, or is it none at all, do the Commanders have because of Brian Johnson, who is now the quarterback's coach in Washington? He was the quarterback's coach here in Philly, was the offensive coordinator last year after getting a promotion into that position when Shane Steichen left. I mean, I try not to make too much of that stuff, but boy, he was here in the greatest era, as you call it, sometimes in maybe the Eagles football, 30-game span or whatever it was. He was here
Yeah.
for that. How much of an
Well,
advantage is that for the Washington
and
Commanders?
deference to Ray Didinger, I'm not going back to 1949 and 1950s, so
Yeah, right.
modern Eagles football, but,
Modern era, yep.
yeah, it was definitely the best run. Yeah, it helps. And real quick on that, Thursday night being good versus Monday night being bad. I guarantee you, for fans, if it's exciting, it's good. Yeah, there's a chance it's a very exciting
Right.
game. There's a
Yeah,
chance
right.
it's
I know.
a very good game as opposed, but I guarantee you the coaching staff will be pulling out their hair over a bunch of stuff that goes on in that particular game. Doesn't
Sloppy
mean it's not
football.
going to be entertaining. It means it's probably going to be, not up to the standards of either team because of the lack of preparation. But anytime it's 4-31, fans get excited. So that's a different conversation. But getting back to Brian Johnson, yeah, I mean, he knows Jalen Hurts better than just about anybody. So it's somewhat of an advantage, but teams change every year. The Eagles went through this with Kellen Moore. I would love to tell you that Kellen Moore going back to Dallas, and he knows Mike McCarthy so well, and he knows that organization so well, was a huge advantage for the Eagles. But really, they just, the Cowboys stink and the Eagles were good, at least in the second half.
Occam's razor, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Eagles,
Occam's razor.
Cowboys
Yeah.
suck and Eagles are good. Yeah.
Simplest explanation is usually the right one. And that's the case there. But yeah, Brian knows Jalen Hurts, everything about Jalen Hurts, what he does well, what he does poorly. But again, do you have time to impart that to your team? Look, everybody wants to, and then you got to execute it. Everybody wants to flush Jalen left and force him to throw against his body. or you want to keep them in the pocket and force them to climb the pocket or try to climb the pocket. Um, and but it's easier said than done. And Brian knows those weaknesses. And, you know, it's all dependent on Dan Quinn and the defense. How much like here, to be perfectly honest, we asked, hey, Ben, are you going to tap into Kellen more this week? And, for the Cowboys knowledge. And Vic was like, what, maybe a little bit. Maybe if he sees him in the hallway, but he's got all the tape he needs.
AKA,
so yeah,
no, he's not.
Well, I didn't say it, but that's probably no. I think people have heard enough of Vic now that he's pretty confident in himself, and he so I do. Yeah, most of that stuff is overrated, but I would say that Brian knows Jalen as well as anybody, and I'm sure Dan Quinn has had a conversation or two with Brian Johnson this week. Well, maybe he hasn't had a chance yet, but he will before the game.
Yeah, we'll see how that gives them a slight advantage. I think more so just because it's Jalen specifically. Like it's one thing to coach on a team; it's another thing to be like best friends with the other team's starting quarterback since you guys were young.
I don't think they're best friends.
Quarterback coach, not best friends, but you know what I mean. They're close. They've obviously been talked about as family friends, and then quarterback coach, and then coordinator. It's like, okay, this guy's got the book on Jalen Hurts, whether we like it or not. We'll see if that gives them an advantage in this game. John, we're going to dive deep into this game. Obviously, we still have a couple days until that game. I have a topic I want to ask you about, and it pertains to Devonta Smith. And there's another topic off of it that I want to ask you about as well. But let me just ask you about Devonta Smith for a second. I think we all know how talented and how good of a professional Devonta Smith is, but he's had no 100-yard game yet this year. His high is 87. 2 of the last 4 games, he's had 3 or less targets. The one game he had -2 yards. Last game he had 14 yards. Now, Devonta Smith, I believe, is a true professional, and I'm not insinuating that he is putting up a big stink about this, but you think that's too little? I mean, you think they got to get him more involved? I mean, we talk about how this team wanting to be a prolific passing offense. Devonta Smith's a pretty good player, and his numbers are just not jumping off the page at all this year so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an issue, but as Nick kind of pointed out yesterday, there's a danger to looking at, just the game book. It's not a box score, a game book at the end of the game. Again, this was a game where they blew them out. That contributes. He mentioned, everybody's excited about the running game. Well, they've had 3 blowouts, and they say the run-pass ratio, and Nick said it again. If people want to read the transcript, look, these games are skewed because we're ahead, we're running to close the game. So it
is good context. They blew out 3 of the last 5 teams.
Exactly. So, that's rare in the NFL. But he hasn't been getting the ball enough. And, if they got to play 60 minutes against Washington, and I think they probably will, the numbers are going to be better just naturally. They'll probably need to make more plays in the passing game. So the numbers will be better naturally. But if that continues, it's going to be a big problem, but it's not going to continue. And that's sort of like what Nick said. I mean, it's one of those things. Games have personalities. We always say that. And look, they're blowing them out, and they're trying to get out of there. And that limits the numbers from a passing perspective. And they've done that 3 times, which if you go back to the Super Bowl season, they didn't do that. You know, we talked all year about TJ Edwards and Kaiser White never leaving the field because they stayed healthy, which was a huge plus for the Eagles. Again, staying healthy, always a huge plus when you go far in this league. They never left the field because they were healthy. And the Eagles didn't feel comfortable sitting starters. Now they feel they're beating teams so soundly, they feel comfortable. And that's a big thing. That's a big thing. And especially on this week, it's a great thing from the perspective of this is a team that you know, that was the plan. Hopefully we can do this. We can rest a little bit. We can get our starters out a little bit against Dallas. They wouldn't say it publicly, but obviously. And they did. And they took advantage of it. And Washington had to play nip and tuck, fighting to the end, lose 28-27. It's another advantage coming into this week. The Eagles are much more rested from that perspective.
We'll see how this game pans out. I'm not worried about Devonta Smith. You know, some people bring up some good points in the chat where it's like, Dank, what did he say? You know, he said, when we needed them in Jacksonville in a close game, guess who they went to? I think it's a good point.
Plays.
I mean, yeah, I mean, monster plays. But my concerns are less about Devonta Smith, honestly, and more about, you know, where the offense is. I mean, look, we talk all the time, and we've debated it more times than John would like to admit because he's still concussed because of it this year. But everything you do in the running game, as John points out, is done to improve what they do in the passing game. And I think the question would become when you look at Devontae's numbers and even Dallas and all the other receivers outside of A.J. Brown, who's not really setting the world on fire this year either, but he's also missed 3.5 games. Is the passing game, John, where they want it to be at this point?
No, I would say it isn't, but, you know, plenty of time to pick it up. I think, you know, Jordan Mailata not being out there has affected the pass protection pretty significantly, to be honest. We talked a little bit about Jalen Hurts holding on to the football too much, leaving a little bit too much meat on the bone, plays to be made. That's still a work in progress. And look, you know, this is Philadelphia. I said it at the time. You know, this isn't about being 7-2 for them. Let's be honest. They want to go to where everybody wants them to go, and everybody expects them to go. They want to go deep into the playoffs, and they want to win a Super Bowl. Can they win a Super Bowl playing like they're playing currently? Probably not. Probably not. Can they? Sure, you can do anything. I say all the time, there's a million ways to win. It's about increasing your margin of error. And now they're playing a style of football where if you're playing a good team, you got to play a specific way. You got to play a clean game. It's always important to play a clean game, but I'm saying you have to play a clean game. Like Detroit turns it over 5 times. They ain't winning that game playing like this. And they ain't winning that game because they don't have that same level of explosiveness in their offense. And they should, because in theory, you can say they have better skill position talent. I don't know if the offensive line is better, but they're comparable. You're talking 1-2 or 2-1. But, you know, I can't picture this team, and you don't want to be in that position to test it, but I can't picture many teams in the history of football throwing 5 interceptions and winning a game.
It's crazy.
The only team I can think of is the Rams. I bring them up all the time. They did not give a shit about turnover. They're the only team in NFL. They didn't care because they knew they were getting the ball right back and they were going to just overwhelm you. And they did for a short period of time, about 3 years for the most part. But That's it. And it happens, and it doesn't happen very often, but the whole point of it is, and I go back to San Francisco's first Super Bowl run, where they played just perfect football. That was the Jimmy Garoppolo team. So, and I can tell you exactly when it happened. The divisional round, just the worst interception you're ever going to see. And Kyle Shanahan unplugged. He let the air out of the tires. He said, I can't trust this guy. And they just said, we're going to run the football. They go on, run the football, destroy Minnesota in that game. It was Eric Kendricks who made the interception. They win the championship. They go in the Super Bowl. They're outplaying Kansas City for the majority of the game. Late in the third quarter, Kansas City scores, bang, bang. They're up 2-score. Game's over. Game is flipping over. It's over. There's such a small margin of error. That's what we're talking about. For those who don't understand, that's what we're talking about. You can win this way, and you can certainly beat Dallas and the Giants and Cleveland and Jacksonville and even Cincinnati. You can win this way, and you can even win a Super Bowl this way. But if one thing goes wrong and you get down 2 scores in the biggest game, and that biggest game can come in the divisional round, it can come in the championship game, it can come. You got to get through all those hurdles. It makes it more difficult. So when you have A.J. Brown, when you have Devonta Smith, when you have Dallas Goedert, when you have even Jahan Dotson, you started to see some of his raw abilities over the past couple of weeks. You should be able to dominate teams both ways. And the Eagles have dominated teams one way, and they haven't dominated teams. Now, there's signs that, as people brought up, Devonta against Jacksonville, at the moment they needed it, and that was a very good sign because Jacksonville was coming back, a couple hinky plays. That's the way the NFL is, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, you got a deep shot to Devonta. You got the great touchdown pass as well. They have all the trappings to do it. But if you're asking me, are they happy with their passing game? I guarantee they're not happy with their passing game right now. Guarantee it.
Have you seen enough if they were put in that circumstance that you just laid out? Let's just say it's late in the year, you're down 2 scores in a playoff atmosphere. I mean, you got to think they'd be able to, but I guess they haven't really shown that this year. I know you're a reporter and you're more objective, but what's your level of comfortability for the Birds to be able to come back in a game like that at this point, based on what you've seen so far this year?
They're more capable than that San Francisco team because, Jalen Hurts offers a lot more than Jimmy Garoppolo. And he can do things, and you saw it in Dallas when, he kind of got things moving with his ability to move the football in the running game. So he was a big part of it from that perspective. So they're more capable than that. But again, the off-schedule stuff, even the design quarterback runs, it's not going to be a huge part of it. That's more of a situational thing where you take advantage of and it depends on, who's playing well defensively late in the season. But if you're playing a good defensive team like Kansas City and you're down 2 scores, I don't like your chances unless this passing game gets to where it needs to be. And I said it that they did the same thing in 2021. This is, they put a bunch on Jalen Hurts' plate early. His first season as it started too much. He's a far different player, and that's what is somewhat disappointing about it. And they scaled it back in the Detroit game. This is what Lane was talking about. He specifically signaled out the Detroit game in 2021, and that was the game. And they ran like 5-6 straight games, whatever it was, with 175 or more rushing yards. 200, I think, in 4 or 5 of them, over 200. No one has had more 200-yard rushing games since 2021 than the Philadelphia Eagles. And a lot of that's when we started talking about the +1 in the running game. A lot of that translates back to Jalen Hurts. But I said when they did it this time, and when Lane said it, that's not a positive. That's not where they want to be. That's what they said. All right, we got to win some football games after. And by the way, they probably panicked too early because, again, their 2-2 start, their panic start, their bad game in Tampa. As Saquon said it this week, they considered that their preseason. I'm not sure they did because they were way too over the top about it.
Yeah.
But they should have considered that their preseason. They didn't stink an A.J. Brown for 3 of those games. So you can't say, hey, we're not throwing the ball and you don't have A.J. Brown.
Right.
And in the Tampa game, obviously, they didn't have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith and Lane Johnson. So, the panic over that is weird. But, now that they've settled down, now that they know what they have, it's time about sharpening things. Not this week because you got to win the game. But there is a little bit of, hey, we should try to sharpen this up, try to sharpen that up. And with Jordan back, I think they'll feel more comfortable dropping back, which is going to upset people. But if he comes back, when he's coming back, not if he comes back. If he comes back this week or next week against the Rams, he'll be back. But I think at that point they become more comfortable. They can leave their tackles on an island. They don't have to help as much, and hopefully but they can run the football. They've been able to run the football since 2021. They're even better because they have Saquon now, but they can run the football. They're 20th, I think, in passing offense. They don't want to be 20th in passing offense.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I will say this, add in some context. They do have the most explosive plays, I think, in the NFL. I know they did, but going into the Dallas game, and they had at least one in the Dallas game with a completion to A.J. Brown of 40-plus yards, at least. I think the stat was. I think Johnny Clark put it out there before the game.
The big plays haven't been the problem. It's the stuff that's there that
intermediate
you're not
stuff.
taking. Yeah.
The
4th and 3 is the perfect example. I mean, that play is there. And why isn't the trigger pulled? That's what they're trying to find out, trying to fix, And, it's easier said than done. But if they're 6th in total offense, 2nd in rushing offense, 7th in points per game, 7th in 4th down offense, 10th in red zone offense. Those are all numbers they want. The 2 numbers they don't want correlate. They're 20th in passing offense and they're 15th in 3rd down offense. And they're 15th in 3rd down offense because the passing game, that's what typically, if you're 3rd and 7 or more, obviously 9 times out of 10, you're going to throw the ball. Now people can point to the draw that worked against, who was that? Jacksonville. All right, but that's not going to work consistently. Whatever that was, 3rd and 18, 3rd and 19. Yeah, if you're being honest, they're not honest with yourself. They're not where they want to be in the passing game.
I don't think it was a bad move to do what they did, though, after the bye week. I mean, look, now you're set up at 7-2, and you could potentially have the NFC go through Philly if you handle business. Now, I'm not saying they don't have to work on that or get it up to speed, but I do think
I'm not saying it's a bad move. I'm saying it's not necessarily it's not necessarily the positive people make it out to be. Now, Nick, and that's why he keeps bringing this up. Look, part of those, even those numbers, as the sample size gets larger, they become more real. But even at this stage, they're skewed a little bit by the fact that they've blown 3 people out. And if those are real games, the passing numbers are up, the running numbers are down. So part of it's that as well. And they've been effective times. I'm focused on one area, and that's it. And that's the football coming out too slow. I really believe that is the difference between this team having the best offense in football and this team having just really good, and then depending on the week.
Right.
There's too much talent not to have a good offense. And they have a good offense, and they have a top 10 offense. But I pointed out last year they had a top 10 offense. I mean, there's too much talent on this team not to have a top 10 offense. And they do, and they will, as long as the quarterback is healthy. But to get to one, to get to a supercharged level, ball's got to come out. And I point to it all the time. In that time to throw metric. The one outlier was 2022, 2.78 seconds.
Yeah.
Everything else over 3. This year, league worst 3.11. It's got to come down to the 2.8 area. And then I think you see everything sort of blossom.
Now, with that stat, I understand what you're saying, and I do think it's a fair thing. We got to watch that with Jalen Hurts and getting that ball out. But I mentioned it yesterday, John, on the show. Where is the gray area there, in your opinion? Because we talk about how good Jalen is off script and what he can do when a play breaks down, and his ability to escape the pocket and make a play downfield or run. And I'm not looking to turn him into a robot that drops back and throws the ball in 2.7 seconds every time. Where's the gray area there where, you're going to have to factor in that it might be a little later than some quarterbacks because of his ability on the off-schedule offense, but you also can't get carried away and take five sacks because you held onto the ball for 6 seconds. Where's the gray area there in your opinion?
Well, yeah, we talked about that yesterday a little bit. The gray area is built in there. Yeah, you don't want to take away his ability. That was his ability taken away in the 2022.
Right. No,
I mean, he ran for 760 yards and 13 touchdowns. I mean,
well, you think anything has to do with it then, with him taking the offense kind of in his hands this year?
Not necessarily, because it was this way in 2021 and it was this way in 2023. That's the concern. Like what you're saying, get rid of the football. That's Tua. And if you watched him last night, I mean,
Yeah, right.
he just gets rid of the football. I don't want him to be that. And there's a happy medium, and I think we've already seen the happy medium, which is 2022. And again, it's just like when something is there, and it's easy to say it because things happen a million miles an hour. But when something is there, like that 4th and 3 play to AJ, and again, it's AJ Brown. It's not Jahan Dotson. It's not Grant Calcaterra. It's AJ Brown. So the trust factor is there. When it's there, take it. I brought up watching some college football. I rarely get to watch college football. Now, those quarterbacks are in a much lesser, developmental stage, and they've dumbed things down to a ludicrous degree in college football. So there was Georgia Ole Miss, who they had a 3rd and goal from the 6-yard line, and the Georgia quarterback read man-to-man, and they played zone, and the play's over, because he can't change anything. You don't know what to do. And he dumped it off to the back. It was a man beater, but there's 2 guys right there to tackle him before the end zone. And then it was Notre Dame, Florida State, where they ran a rub route, and tight end's open, and the quarterback doesn't throw the ball, and the offensive coordinator screaming at him on the sidelines, why is that ball not out on time? That's more of the correlation with Jalen Hurts. Why? Because he doesn't trust what he sees. Why doesn't he trust what he sees? That's coaching. That's getting him prepared. That's all that kind of stuff. So I always say, people want to criticize coaches. Criticize coaches all you want, but stop with the result-oriented, oh, that's a bad play call. That's a bad decision. Focus on the teaching. Why isn't Jalen Hurts comfortable enough to take what's there with A.J. Brown? That's the question. If I had the answer, I'd be making a lot of money as a coach in this league. I don't have the answer.
Well, I mean, is there some of it that's on like the first year in this offense with Kellen? And I know it's somewhat similar and there's similarities, but a lot of people talk about that because second year with Shane Steichen is when Jalen Hurts exploded. I'm not saying it's a valid excuse. I'm asking you how much stock you put in to that talking point that it's the first year with Kellen and he's still acclimating in a way.
A little bit, but that's more the terminology stuff. Vices, a lot of the concepts are similar to every offense. And generally, I'm not going to put a ton of that on the new system. Maybe he's bogged down a little bit more. Maybe there's too much autonomy now, but I don't think that's going to go over well if they try to take it from him. There could be a host of reasons. Other than, maybe we've hit a ceiling and maybe it's just the way he plays, which would be the worst case scenario. But, there's a college sort of, there's always been a college, and people will take this as an insult. It's not an insult because, again, this is the most successful stretch of Eagles football ever in the modern era. And the offense has been the best Eagles offense ever. So, but it's very college centric. And it's very simplified. And, if you simplify stuff, you're probably not going to be good at the more complex stuff, which is timing routes and throwing people open and things like that. That's not going to go over well. But hey, it's never bad to tell the truth.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. Good breakdown here on the offense on this Birds 365 Tuesday. Preparing for a Thursday night game, everybody. A big game, maybe our biggest game of the year to this point. We've had some good games, but none of them have been bigger than this one. At least that's what it feels like to me with the Thursday night game. Commanders sitting at 7-3. Birds are 7-2. Winner of this game could potentially be on the track to win the NFC East, which guarantees you, obviously, a playoff spot. I think both of these teams are playoff teams, but could go a long way this Thursday night game in winning the NFC East. I want to thank everybody for being here this morning. John, the legend, James Carver, has checked back in with us. He has been dealing with a lot of stuff with the leg. So, James, we send our prayers up to you. Hopefully everything is good. It's great to see you back in the chat. I know you've had a lot going on, so thanks for checking back in, brother. Great to see you in the chat from James Carver. Johnny Mac, we got a couple super chats we're going to get to on the other side of the break. Shout out to Miz, shout out to Abe, and shout out to Nosti Beats, the super chats. We're going to get to them when we return, and we're going to continue to talk about this Eagles-Commanders game, Jayden Daniels, how to defend them, what looks to throw at them, how the Birds can defensively play against this team. We'll talk about all that coming up next here on Birds 365. Before I get to the break, let me tell you about the great people at BetUS. Go check them out, everybody. They're one of our exclusive sponsors here on Birds 365, and we thank them for sponsoring the 2-hour show today. You see the promo code on your screen. It's YouTube 150. That gives you a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, and you get 125% on your second and third deposit, and it's all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. Big thanks to them for sponsoring the show. We'll be back in 3 minutes, everybody, on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid. Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition here of Birds 365 on JAKIB Sports. Big thanks to everybody for being here in the chat. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's Johnny Mac, John McMullen, the #1 Eagles beat reporter in town. Give him a follow at JF McMullen on X, and give me a follow at Real Zander with a Z. Zander's with a Z. I got a couple of you guys following me today. I always follow back. Anybody that comes from JAKIB Nation, I will follow all of you back. Thank you guys for checking in with us over on there. And then another update on the channel. We are close to 50,000 subscribers. Now, I will say this. The subscribers are not the best metric to determine YouTube success. Many believe they are because it's public to everybody to see. But they are not the #1 metric. But by all means, we like to get our subscribers up. So if you're out there, thanks for Prince for reminding me. Tell a friend about JAKIB Sports, everybody. Tell your Eagles friends about Birds 365 and about the National Football Show and the pre- and post-game show. We are just about 500 away from 50,000 subscribers. So big thanks to all of our viewers out there. Make sure you tell a friend, share the show, do whatever you got to do to help us out. If it's something that you want to do, we appreciate each and every single one of you for doing that. So big thanks to Prince for keeping track of that for us. Johnny Mac, we're going to get to a couple super chats here before we talk about some other topics. Got about an hour and 5 minutes left on the show today. Let's go to Nosty Beats first because it's about Jalen, and we were just talking about Jalen there, so we'll continue with this topic for a second. Nosty Beats says, as much as Jalen gets the offense going with his legs, he's also typically the reason they fail to get going early in games. Now, before I have you answer that and before I have him give your opinion, I'll say it does seem, at least from my perspective, it does seem a lot of Jalen's struggles come early in games. I don't know if that's a coincidence. I don't know if that's even true. It's just an eye test thing, something that I'm feeling. What's your response to this comment here from Nosty Beats, John?
Yeah, well, this year, yes. They've been terrible for the most part at the start of games. We talked about that a lot. And it's been a whole host of reasons going back to the meaningless on the first offensive play of the season on a bad field in Brazil. You slip and you're 2nd and 15 and you're off script. Bang, right there. In that particular game. So generally their slow starts have been about negative plays, typically when it is, and that's, could be a false start, could be a penalty, could be a sack, could be a slip, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they've been behind the sticks a heck of a lot early in games. Has that been consistent with Jalen Hurts throughout his career? No. So I can't put it fully on him. I will say he seems to be a quarterback who gets better when he settles in, like a starting pitcher. Sometimes a starting pitcher needs to get out of that first inning, and then he's cruising. Maybe there's some parts of that, but so many things to the slow starts this season, and it's all negative plays, all negative plays. Now he's part of some of them. He takes a lot of coverage sacks. I always get a kick out of when people say the offensive line has given up this many sacks, and most of them are covered sacks. Most of them, the ball should have been out in a typical environment. So he's responsible, certainly as the quarterback. He's responsible for a lot of it, but I don't think it's been consistent. They've started quickly before. They were dominant again at times during this stretch. So it's got to be better than it has been this season. And it has been better. And it generally harkens back to Kellen Moore's clean operation. Hasn't been a very clean operation early.
We'll see if they can correct that coming up here. Got a couple good games, John. This may be the best and toughest 3-game stretch the Eagles will have this year before the playoffs. They got the Commanders, they got the Rams, and then they have the Ravens. So it should be a tough couple of matchups. And we'll see how the Birds fare against these next 3 opponents. Certainly will be tougher than their last 3 here. Let's go to Miz. Miz checks in. Miz, appreciate you, brother. Good to see you in the chat again. Miz says, J-Mac, how does Daniels hold up against the blitz? Now, I don't know if you have the numbers in front of you, John, but I'll add a question to that while you answer Miz. What's the best way to defend this guy? Rookie? Not a lot out there on him. Sometimes that's a tough battle. Jalen Hurts was good early in his career. Most didn't have the tape on him. How do you balance that? And then to answer Miz's question, how does he hold up against the blitz?
Well, so far phenomenal. But he's been phenomenal at everything. So he's been great. Facing pressure, he's 180 of 262 for 68.7 completion percentage, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Yeah, pretty good. When he's not blitz, he's 70.1 completion percentage. So when he is blitz, it goes down to 66.3. He has 4 touchdowns, all 4 touchdowns, no interceptions when blitzed. His film rating from PFF is 86.3, which is pretty freaking good. Yeah, he's been spectacular. Now, hasn't faced Vic Fangio yet, and I'm sure even on a short week, Vic is going to give him stuff he's never saw before. But there's nothing in Jayden Daniels' very small sample size that points to a bad football player, including work against pressure. He's been phenomenal. And he's going to be special as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah, he is a smaller dude, though, man. He takes a lot. I mean, he kind of has a similar style to Jalen Hurts, where he can escape and run. But I look at Jalen Hurts and I look at Jayden Daniels. I'm like, yeah, one of those guys looks like they can potentially handle a beating that the NFL will give. The other guy doesn't. Now, Lamar Jackson's an outlier. He's not built like Jalen Hurts either. Closer to Jayden Daniels with the smaller, slimmer body frame, but it's not a perfect indicator. But Jayden Daniels doesn't look like he's going to be able to take the beating that Jalen Hurts looks like he can take. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, he certainly doesn't have the frame, but again, people said that about Lamar. Lamar's going
Yeah.
strong. People obviously in Washington will compare him to RG3. I mean, he had one great year and it was over because he got hurt in the playoffs, destroyed his knee. So, you're always a play away in the NFL, and his standard, the way he plays the game, you're more susceptible to injuries. I think it's fair to say that. So, but you can't legislate them either way. So I've always advocated when you get a player like that, your whole goal should be take advantage of whatever window you have. Take advantage of it. That's the only way you can go about it. And I include the Eagles in that category, even though, again, Jalen Hurts is more equipped to handle some of it because of his frame and his strength and all that kind of stuff. He's still more susceptible to injuries than Brock Purdy. But everybody gets hurt in this league. Again, Zach Ertz said it, and our old friend Zach will be back with the Commanders. If you play in this game long enough, the injury rate is 100%. Kirk Cousins was the most durable quarterback in the NFL right up until he wasn't. Right up until he tore his Achilles. Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles. Incredibly durable. 100%. Even Brett Favre got hurt at the end. All you can do is take advantage of the shelf life.
Yep, no doubt. Good point, Johnny Mac. Abe checks in. Eagles fans should antagonize Dan Quinn with 28-3. Didn't what's his name also have an epic collapse at some point? Their offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury, isn't he responsible for another? I forget what it is.
Well, Arizona, Arizona was like the last unbeaten team. I don't know, 7-8-0, and they kind of collapsed. Still won, I think, 11 games, but they collapsed. But hey, Eagles fans can't talk about collapses after last season.
Well, at least we didn't blow a Super Bowl lead 28-3. That's a little of a different level there.
Oh yeah, well, Super Bowl collapse.
Yeah.
I thought you meant collapses in general. Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, that was abysmal. And Kyle Shanahan deserves a lot of blame for that too, because kick a field goal. For as much as I love Kyle for play scheming, and he's not good with game management, and he was only the coordinator, but I mean, he's responsible for, calling plays and taking field goals and things like that at the time. So he deserves a lot of blame for that too. But yeah, I mean, hey, knock yourself out if you want to antagonize.
Abe, if you're going down to the game, feel free to chant it and put it on a sign, brother. And then hold it up there. Let's keep going on our super chats. Thanks everybody for the super chats. We got an opened up hour number 2 here. So any super chats that come, we will get to them, and I'll get Johnny Mac to give you guys a response. So thanks everybody for the support this morning. And I think we're doing pretty well on the like button as well. So thank you guys. Philly Don checks in. Philly Don, good to see you, brother. I think Birds can take 2 of the next 3. I think it will come down to turnovers in either this or the Ravens game. I think that's a pretty fair take. You can turn the ball over a lot of times. That's an indicator of whether you'll win or lose. But 2 of the next 3, I think, would be good, Philly Don. John, what say you?
Yeah, I would want 2 of 3. I don't think they're beating Baltimore. I've been pretty consistent.
I think we can beat Baltimore.
Now,
I think it's a tough game, but I think we can beat them.
Well, I mean, yeah, they've lost. I mean, I don't know how, but they've lost.
Lost to the damn Browns with Jameis Winston.
They've struggled weirdly in stopping the pass, and because they have such good players in the secondary. It's weird. So maybe it's the pass rush. I got to look more into it that week. Obviously, they lost their coordinator. That affects it. We know that. They got a first-time coordinator who used to be a player for them. So maybe it's as simple as that. Sean Desai syndrome. But yeah, Eagles have, they've never won in Baltimore in the regular season. Of course, they've never won in Cincinnati, and they did this year.
Yeah.
But Baltimore's better. Baltimore's better than Cincinnati. But that's a game where they're gonna, if they win it, they're gonna have to win a shootout. Are they capable of winning a shootout? I don't know. I don't think they are at this stage against a team like that, but maybe they will be by that point.
Well, I mean, as you pointed out,
it's a constant evolution.
Right. As you pointed out on the show this week, Ravens obviously have the advantage when it comes to quarterback. They got the best player in the world, arguably, right now in Lamar Jackson. But I think the Eagles have better skill players all across the board, maybe outside of Derrick Henry. So I think the Eagles have an advantage in that game. Now, who can utilize them better?
I don't think anybody has a better group of skill position players than the Eagles, but they don't have the best offense. So it's similar to what I said about Baltimore reverse. Why with Kyle Hamilton and Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins is having a great year as a rookie. Why are they struggling defending the pass? I don't know. Why are the Eagles struggling at times on offense in the passing game? I don't know. Well, I do know when AJ wasn't playing. And not that they're even struggling now because AJ seems to get 100 yards every game, but
he does. It feels like sometimes he's not even making a huge impact, and then you look down, and you're like, holy shit, he's got 105 yards.
Yeah, it's 20th in the league, and it should be much better. It should be much better. Now, part of that is, and the Bears just fired their offensive coordinator. Boy, the Bears are just they're just Shane Waldron out as the Bears offensive coordinator.
They should think about firing that coach. Is who they should think about firing.
Yeah, it doesn't even. Well, they will after the season, but they're not going to fire him in the season.
Is Ryan Poles gone?
Should be, but we'll see. Look, it's I'm going off on a tangent. It's a dereliction of duty. You draft Caleb Williams after you draft Mitchell Trubisky and Justin Fields. And again, you have a defensive guy running the show. It's just a dereliction of duty. And I don't want to be the guy who says don't hire defensive guys because, look at the job JG's doing in Arizona. Everybody loves Mike McDonald in Seattle already. Dan Quinn and he's turning around Washington. There's plenty of examples because it's a leadership position about more than
right.
But when you're drafting a guy that high in the draft, everything in your organization should be focused on one thing, getting the most out of that particular player. They already screwed it up with Trubisky. They already screwed it up with Fields. Now they're going to screw it up again. So here's Caleb Williams. He's already got one coordinator. Bang, he's going to be on 2 in his rookie season and probably 3 after the season. You talk about Jalen Hurts and the 1 year with Shane. Think about that. All right. He's going to have 2 in his rookie season. Eberflus is gone, so they're going to have a new head coach.
Right.
So he's going to have a third guy before he even plays the first game of his second year. That's an abysmal organization. Abysmal.
Now it can be overcome. I mean, Jalen started with Doug, if everybody remembers that. He had 4. Actually, I actually thought his 4 games his rookie year with Doug were pretty good. But anyway, he got a new staff in that second year. But yeah, that Bears organization is brutal. Let's keep going. Prince Swayze checks in. Prince, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. And Philly Don, I did see you meant the Rams. Autocorrect gets the best of us sometimes. Philly Don, appreciate your super chats though, brother. Prince says the Eagles haven't had a complete game yet. I feel this team is on a different trajectory than last year. I believe we will continue to improve, and I like our chances this season. Coaching matters. I agree, Prince. It definitely doesn't feel like it did last year at 7-2. It feels like they're building, and getting better each week. John, what's your response to Prince?
Yeah, I've been talking about that since early in the season. It's not about being 10-1. It's about playing your best football late in the season when the
Right.
playoffs starts. So, can they get there? Hopefully. It's a better trajectory than last season, certainly. But we know what happened last season. So we're working off the hindsight of what happened. But they were definitely better early last season than they were late, to say the least. And you want the exact opposite. Nobody's saying coaching doesn't matter. I'm saying it doesn't matter as much as most fans think it does. The best coach in the NFL can't win without significant talent. Now, he can get you from, I would say, the best coaches will get a 5-win roster to 7 or 8, a 10-win roster to 12 or 13, and so forth and so on. It's always players first, always players first. And, if I'm Nick Sirianni, because let's be honest, a bunch of people are going to be calling for his job if he loses to Washington on Thursday night. He's 41-19. If I'm Nick Sirianni, I just point at the scoreboard. I point at the record. Stop doing the nonsense. There's a bunch of people aren't going to understand it. There's nothing you can do about it. The expectations, not that it's bad. It's good to have high expectations. But if you want to fire a coach who's 41-19, I just talked to you about Chicago and their constant turnover.
Right.
Trubisky, not only off the field, but on the field. Trubisky, think about that. You take that guy's second overall. Fields is a top 10 pick, whatever the hell he was.
I think he was like 10, yeah.
And now you take another quarterback at number 1 overall, and you can't figure anything out. And this organization is so stable, so successful. 680 winning percentage. 680 winning percentage. And a bunch of people think that's bad.
I don't think they think it's bad. I think they think it could be better with our team. And I'm not saying they're right.
That is the definition. We just went through political season. That is the definition of freaking entitled, man. That is the flipping definition of entitled.
Yeah, we're winning a lot of football games. We are winning a lot. We win a lot more than we lose. No doubt with Nick Sirianni. Good stuff, Prince. Thank you for checking in, brother. We'll get to your next super chat as well. James Carver, my main man. James Carver, good to have you back on the show, brother. We appreciate your support as always. James Carver checks in. He says, Steelers showed how to beat Daniels. Stop the run, then set the edge and contain and let the tackles press the pocket while maintaining outside leverage. Make them beat the back six. Make them beat the back six of nickel, which ours is elite. Big day for Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter needed. I think he's right about that.
Well, they lost the game, and I hope you're okay, James, but they lost the game 28-27, and they might have got screwed on the spot. They definitely got screwed. They definitely got screwed. I don't know if Zach got it, but they should have respotted it, and they should have measured, and maybe it was inches short. But my point of it was razor close that game.
Yeah, but Jayden did maybe have one of his worst games. He was 17 of 34.
Well, I haven't looked.
He was 50%. I watched most of the game, but we were doing our
pregame. I didn't watch the game. I'm trying to pull up his grades and see how he played. It was solid. He didn't get a bad grade, but he certainly overall he's the third graded quarterback from PFF in the NFL. So he definitely didn't play up to that level. But, I'm not going to say beating a team 28-27 in that fashion is like some kind of formula. I mean, that's a 50-50 game. I mean, so in other words, what I disagree with is showing how to beat Daniels. I mean, it's a 28-27 game. I don't think that's a blueprint, is what I'm trying to say. And by the way, you're bringing TJ Watt. I mean, you can't replicate what TJ Watt does.
He's
So anybody
unreal.
who wants to say do what Pittsburgh does, all right, give me TJ Watt and I could try.
I have a hard time believing you think Michael Parsons is better than TJ Watt.
Well, I don't necessarily think he's better. I think they're both. I haven't said he's better. I think
Well, we talked
Parsons-
about the generational, and we remember
Well, I
we
think
went
they're,
through it. Yeah.
TJ is as well. I shouldn't use that term because I hate that term. So I'll find myself. Yeah, TJ Watt's phenomenal.
He's
If
the
I
motherfucker to block, dude. I see him coming, and I'm like, holy shit.
yeah, I mean, and his brother was better than him.
I know.
I don't know what the Watts
Was his
are
brother
doing.
better than you think overall as a like in the whole scope? You think his brother was better than him? I think
Yeah, he
TJ's
broke
getting
down.
close.
I think JJ was on. I think
He was unreal, right? He dealt with more injuries for
Yeah,
sure.
he went 3 consecutive years. I believe he was defensive player of the year. 3 consecutive years he was defensive player of the year.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
And then he started to break down a little bit, which people can intimate certain things about. But
Joe Woods says, John, we have Huff.
but they're both so good. It's just ridiculous yeah, but I mean, I first of all, I say Myles Garrett is the best edge player. And then I'd probably put TJ second and Micah and Nick Bosa third. So probably tied for third. But they're all
we're close.
phenomenal.
I put Nick right ahead of Micah and then probably Micah in there at fourth.
But they're all phenomenal.
Yeah,
But
they're all great. no doubt.
to James's point of Pittsburgh showed, Pittsburgh showed, hey, if you have TJ Watt, you can do a bunch of stuff. But they show that every week. You can't really duplicate that unless you have a Bryce Huff. No, I'm joking. Yeah. So you can't just do what Pittsburgh does because you don't have the biggest component to what Pittsburgh does.
Good stuff there. James, thanks for checking in, brother. I agree with your point a little bit more than Johnny.
And by the way, one more thing. The Eagles have a better overall defense than the Steelers. So they can go about things a different way, but they have to go about things a different way. There's no blueprint. That's the only thing I'm arguing.
Yeah. We'll see what they do. It's going to be interesting because, as you point out, there isn't a blueprint. I mean, Jayden Daniels is in his rookie season, so going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Prince checks in again. Prince, thank you, brother. Appreciate your support as always. Keeping track of those subscribers and likes for us, man. I appreciate you and appreciate what you offer to the channel all the time. Prince says, every time the Eagles face a strong team, analysts consider them the underdogs. Is this due to coaching, given that we are the most talented team?
Well, I saw
Vegas.
I saw McAfee trolling the trolls.
Oh, that was hilarious. I saw that.
Yeah, I look. There's some people like I think it depends who you're talking about. I think some people are in an act. I think some people don't believe what they say. The Eagles are not. Are the Eagles under? They're not underdogs for this game.
I think they're 3.5 point
favorite. They got to be a favorite. They're playing at home.
Yeah,
They're
Prince,
not
they
an
got to be a
underdog.
favorite this week. I thought they were 3.5 point favorite, which I guess means close to a push because normally I think Vegas gives
It's a half point favorite if you
Right.
do the old school.
Yeah,
But
right.
they're the favorites in this game, so I don't think that's the case. I think, in fact, over this stretch from the 2-5 start in 2021 to right now, which is the greatest stretch in modern Eagles history, they have been favorites an astonishing number of times. Astonishing. So I don't. Now there was a little bit of a pause after the collapse, but yeah, I mean they're favorites in this game, and they'll be favorites in Los Angeles, I believe. They will not be favorites in Baltimore. That's not disrespect. That's just common sense. I mean, Baltimore's a great team, and they're playing at home, so they're going to be favorite. Vegas doesn't care about disrespecting the Eagles. If they don't care. They shouldn't even say Vegas because sports books are all over. They just want to make money, and the whole goal of a line is to push both sides so they make money. They want people to bet both sides. It's got nothing to do with disrespect.
Prince, appreciate you checking in, brother. Let me keep rolling here. He dropped another one. Thank you, Prince. Texans use the same game plan that the Bucs used to beat the Lions. I understand what James is referring to. There's a blueprint, but how you execute it makes a difference. It's a good point.
Well, the Texans didn't beat the Lions. They played well for a long period.
They should have beat the
They should have beat the Lions.
They should have beat the Lions.
They didn't beat the Lions, so the blueprint didn't work.
John, what did that defense say to that offense in the locker room after the game? I picked that motherfucker off 5 times.
Yeah.
You give me 23 points.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'd have been pissed.
Yeah, there's no blueprint to anything in the NFL. Jalen Hurts said after the game, it's great. AJ said it early in the season. Jalen said it after the game in Dallas. For some reason, it was asked about momentum. It's not real. It doesn't exist. It could be stopped with one play. Human nature's real. That exists. There's no blueprint. There's no one way to play. The good teams will win a bunch of ways during the season. So if they can beat you, that's the whole point of become a well-rounded team like Detroit that can beat in so many different ways. That's the whole point of trying to get to that level, and where the Eagles certainly were at one point, and maybe they'll get back there because they can beat you in a host of different ways. So you can't say there's a blueprint for beating Carolina. Never mind. Well, maybe showing up, but never mind a good team. There's no blueprint. There's never a blueprint.
Well, Nick Bosa would disagree with you. Remember when he said that last year after they
destroyed? And I said Nick Bosa's full of shit. And
well, it didn't look like he was last year when the Eagles proceeded to lose.
Oh, well, San Francisco stole their soul. I would agree with that.
That's yeah, exactly.
But that back what I just said about TJ, think about it from a logical standpoint. Same thing with Nick, because Nick's a great player. Well, all right. If I want to copy how San Francisco beat the Eagles, well, how do I copy that? Can I get the Nick Bosa Xerox down the hall? Can I get the Christian McCaffrey Xerox? Can I get the Deebo Samuel Xerox down the hall? I mean, how do you copy a good team's players? Like, I really don't think fans give enough respect to the players. I really don't. Good and bad, by the way. But respect is it. They don't want to criticize them when they play poorly. It's all the coaching. And then when they play well, it's well, just do what they did. And like the Nick Bosas of the world, the TJ Watts, they don't make a difference. It's like, well, we just have to do what they did.
I get what you're saying.
It's not feasible.
Somebody put in the chat, and I don't have a chance to do it right now. Look up the stats for road teams on Thursday night. I think that's advanced stats. I don't have time to look it up now, but if he wants to put it back,
yeah, there, I mean, it's a big advantage for the home team. Everybody wants to play at home. Nick said that. Yeah, I mean, it does, because somebody asked Nick about this is a longer trip than usual the week prior, a Thursday night game that they give teams. Dallas is a pretty significant trip. And Nick just immediately brushed it off. He said, all right, it's a little bit longer, but we're at home. So I'll take it. Everybody wants to play at home on the Thursday night game. Everybody. Yeah. So it's advantage Eagles.
Yeah, no doubt. James Carver checks back in. Appreciate it, brother. J-Mac, we'll say that Wilson also played amazing, which means Jalen needs to have a great game, but score was more like Cowboys 2 weeks ago, where score was way less indicative than the game because the Cowboys weren't 7 points less the week prior. I think he's saying the score didn't really indicate the way the game played out in that Steelers-Commanders game. But Wilson did play well. By the way, Wilson.
He played very well. But that's another thing. I mean, guys don't play the same every week. I mean, we see that. They don't play the same every week. You wish they would, when they hit that level, and you wish they played that consistently, but it doesn't work like that. These are human beings. They don't play the same every week. And we don't even know what they're dealing with. I try to bring up, typically when we think about the NFL as, injury related, so many guys play with maladies. Like last week, Jalen Hurts was dealing with the ankle. That became an issue. Saquon Barkley was dealing with a leg injury from his backward leap, and then he hurt himself in the game. Everybody's dealing with something, even the guys who are out there. And you don't know how they're feeling on a particular game day. It might not even, it could be something as simple as Russell Wilson has, a fight with Ciara, his wife. Your girlfriend could be bitching at you before you head to the stadium, and it can affect your day. It could be something as simple as that. These are human beings. They don't play like an automatron, like what Russell Wilson, so he's going to be this for 17 games. Just, it doesn't work that way.
Good point, Johnny Mac. Appreciate all of our super chats today. Great stuff from everybody in the chat. Got a big game here coming up. Brian Fleming making me chuckle in the chat. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Make sure you guys hit that like button. I think we're up over 150, which is impressive. Got to give credit to Prince, Johnny Mac, who's dubbed the name for you, Mr. PFF. That's what Prince dubbed, and you shot back at Prince a couple days ago and shut it up. Good stuff, Prince. Thanks for keeping track of that, brother. We'll get to our final commercial break, and then we'll come back. We'll put a bow on the show. I'll take any other supers that come in, and we'll talk about this Eagles-Commanders game. What's the best approach for this offense going into this game, and any other key takeaways that we had from the Week 10 in the NFL, which is now officially concluded after the Rams lost last night to the Dolphins. Are the Dolphins out of this thing? Could they come back with Tua? I don't know. I think they're 3-6. They might be too far gone. We will see. A lot of good storylines across the NFL. We'll be back in 3 minutes, everybody. Before I do that, let me get to the great people at BetUS and tell you guys about our partners here sponsoring the show. The full 2-hour show, Birds 365, is brought to you by BetUS. Use the promo code YouTube150. That gives you 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit and 125% on your second and third deposits, all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. What are you guys betting on in this game with Eagles Commanders? I might be taking a Saquon Barkley over for our 5th jersey giveaway of the year. Our 4th jersey giveaway winner has been shipped out, but he is in the UK, so we'll see when he gets that thing. I don't know how the NFL.com works with shipping to the UK. All I know is I had to pay $50 of postage. But anyway, hopefully I'll give away our 5th jersey this week. I'm taking Saquon Barkley on the over on BetUS. So big thanks to them for sponsoring the program. We'll be back in 3 minutes, everybody, on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365. Got a great show going on here. A lot of likes, a lot of people in the chat. Appreciate everybody from JAKIB Nation in the chat today responding, chatting, sending messages. We appreciate each and every single one of you. And if you dropped a like on the show, we appreciate that as well. Just about 27 minutes left to go today. John, you racing off to NovaCare right after the show, or is it a little delayed? I know Jalen likes to speak at like o'clock at night.
Jalen's it's not Jalen, it's Vic. Vic likes to practice later in the afternoon, so Vic is behind the. Jalen's not talking until sometime after 5, so yeah, I'm gonna be there for a while. Yeah, it's gonna be a long day. It's a long week. As Nick said, you got to cram 100 hours into 4 days. So, it's a long week.
Yeah, you'll be able to kick your feet up on Sunday though, and on the couch and relax and maybe watch.
I won't be able to do that. I got
now your wife got the honeydew list for you on Sunday.
Yeah, when there's no Eagles. Yeah, I got the hammer comes down, man. Got to take advantage of it.
I'll be carving some time out, hopefully, to watch some football on Sunday. Big Thursday night game, everybody, coming up. Maybe, John, is this crazy to say? Is this the biggest game of the year for the Eagles?
So far, yeah. I mean,
definitely so
for
far.
First place in the NFC East.
Yeah.
If they lose this game, all the angst is right back. I mean, right back. All the fire Nick, especially if it unfolds a certain way and there's some fourth down failures, and they lose this football game, the angst is right back. It's never far away. So yeah, it's a very big game. First place in the NFC East. And they should win the game. They're the better team. They're playing at home. They should win the game, but so it's not always that simple, as we know or should know by now.
Good stuff. Philly Don. Thanks, Philly Don. He went and got the stats for us here on this Thursday night. Drops us a $5 super chat. Thank you, brother, for the support. Philly Don's always good on my Twitter, too. I like interacting with you on Twitter, man. Philly Don says, home teams are 11-6 straight up and 8-9 against the spread the last 5 years on Thursday night games. So clear advantage there for the home teams, but not overwhelming. I mean, 11-6 is solid straight up, but not
I mean, you got to look into is it, a great team against a bad team? Is it, a lot? They've gone a lot more division games now in Thursday night. So, is it the Eagles versus the Giants? I mean, it could be skewed by that, the competition. For years it was Jacksonville, who wasn't very good. So, yeah, you got to look into those numbers. It's not just Thursday versus not home versus home versus away on Thursday. It's still, doesn't matter what day you play. If you're better, you're probably going to win. Significantly better, you're probably going to. The Eagles could have played that Dallas team on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They would have won at AT&T Stadium. Doesn't matter the circumstance. Now that's rare in the NFL where you have such a, for a number of reasons, injuries, quarterback, blah, blah, blah. It's rare where you have that kind of slam dunk homecoming game, basically on the road, where you're specifically scheduling the bad team so you can make everybody happy, as they do in college often. But yeah, all those numbers need added context to them.
All right, I got a pretty incredible stat for everybody here on Birds 365 today. So if you're listening, listen closely here. Johnny Mack, I want to get your takeaway on this. There's only been 2 games this season across the entire NFL where teams were held to under 50 net passing yards. You want to take a smack at what those 2 games were?
Well, Cooper Rush was one. Was Daniel Jones the other?
Both games came against the Eagles defense.
Yeah.
And 50 net passing yards. Remember, Cooper Rush and Trey Lance combined for 66, but they took 17 yards of sacks.
Yeah.
So they ended up under 50 net yards in the passing game. That's pretty unbelievable. Like I know the opponents aren't good, and a lot of people are. I don't want to say they're discrediting the defense, but they're not ready to say they're great yet because of the opponents.
Well, I think that's being realist. I think everybody
it would be realist if you were doing the same things to these teams that everybody else was doing. Holding them to under 50 obviously hasn't been done
anytime you do that, and when you do that against a body that's breathing, that's impressive. Because you can get one 30-yard pass and bang. Yeah, I mean, look, they're playing well defensively. I say that every day. I'm amazed by how well they're playing defensively. But yeah, I mean, I'm also not going to go and say what they did in Dallas is, one of the greatest defensive performances ever. That had more to do with the quarterback.
Right.
It did. It just did. He was incapable of, by the second quarter, the Eagles realized, all right, this guy isn't competent enough to throw the ball 5 yards down the field. And then they could jump every route, and you can do all these things, and you can play aggressively. You're not worried about somebody going over the top. Now Jayden Daniels is coming in. One of 2 things can happen. You could be so confident from beating up on these, Rocky Balboa types who aren't supposed to win, and you beat the living what out of them, and it inspires you to play better against the better competition. Or you could think every day is going to be like Cooper Rush, and all of a sudden you see somebody with this kind of talent and he just gouges the crap out of you. Now, the last time that happened was Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, and that was the most impressive performance of this stretch by the defense. It was also the worst performance statistically of this 5-game stretch, but it was the best performance when you enter in the context. They held Cincinnati to 280 yards, somewhere in that range. That's freaking phenomenal.
Right.
Now, but remember early in that game, the first drive, where Joe Burrow, I think, was 11 of 12, and people were losing their minds.
I thought that was
they're giving up the underneath stuff.
Yeah.
And they go right down and score. Look, you got to be realistic. And hey, take advantage of it. They took advantage of it. The Eagles deserve all the credit in the world. But don't expect Cooper Rush results again this season.
Fair enough. Let's go to my man, Shooter McGavin. Shooter McGavin is not an Eagle fan, but he's a great supporter of ours, so we appreciate him being here. I think he's either a Commander fan or I thought he was like a Patriots fan. I'm not sure. Shooter, you have to clarify who you're a fan of. But he chirps and he says, getting cocky again, Eagles fans, just like the Phillies fans and the 10-1 fans from last year. Well, I'll say this to you, John, in response to Shooter. I'm just going to assume for a second he's a Commander fan. I see him. He says Pats. I knew he was a Pats fan. But let's just say he's a Commander fan, or for any of our Commanders fans.
No,
Commanders, pretenders or contenders, John. They're 7-0 versus teams under 500, and they're 0-3 versus teams over 500. I'm not quite drinking the Commander Kool-Aid yet.
No,
John.
I'm not drinking it yet. But I mean, we went through this with the Eagles in 2022. I mean, you look. To me, it's one of those things where, yeah, you play better against teams that are less good. And then when you play better competition, it gets more difficult. I don't know why that's such a controversial thing. I respect teams that take advantage of their schedule. They've taken advantage of their schedule. Guess what? Their schedule, except for the Eagles down the stretch, is pretty easy. So if they keep doing that, they're going to be in good shape. And then you take your shot in the playoffs. We'll see. I don't know if they're the Eagles to me are a better football team than the Commanders right now. So this is, to me, it's a big test for the Commanders. It's a young team. They still have to learn how to play these games, these big games. They haven't been in this position for a very long time. They got a rookie quarterback. There's a lot of things to prove. But yeah, I mean, it works both ways. I mean, people used to get mad. The Eagles didn't beat anybody in 2022. Yeah. How many times you hear that? Same thing, you know?
Yeah, that's fair.
You take advantage. The Eagles didn't play anybody last week, but guess what? They knocked down the pin. Like I said, Minnesota had the same situation. They're both 7-2. They're both playoff contenders. They're both blah, blah, blah. And they had to fight for their lives. Now, the week prior, the Eagles had to fight for their lives because they shot themselves in the foot a couple times. All you can do is take advantage of what is in front of you. Both Washington and Philadelphia have a much more difficult task than those, not Washington from last week, good team in Pittsburgh. The Eagles from last week, the Eagles from the Commanders from the 7 games they've won. This is a much more difficult test, just like last week was for them. Last week, they came up just short. But to assume a 28-27 game means they can't play with a playoff level team seems kind of specious, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. You're right.
I mean,
let's see what they can do. Let's see what they can do. Let's get to a couple more super chats. James Carver checks in. I'm saying now, so Johnny Mac doesn't say I'm evaluating the outcome. Go for points and punt on our side of field regardless. Take the points, please. JK.
Oh, that ain't happening, James. I hate to break it to you. I mean,
stop it yesterday, by the way.
This is an organizational philosophy, and it is one that served them well. And I got news for it. The Eagles collapse again, and Nick Sirianni's fired. The next coach is going to do the same thing because they're going to hire a coach who's going to do it. Because they believe, and they are correct by the numbers, that it's a huge advantage for them. It has been a huge advantage for them. It continues to be a huge advantage for them, and it's not going to stop. And if it does stop, that's when you should get scared, because that means they're starting to have doubts about their abilities. And that's when fans should get scared.
We'll see what ends up happening. James, appreciate the super, brother. D. Hughes checks in. Our man D. Hughes. Good to see you, brother. He says, where are you with the defensive scheme? I hated it coming into the season, but Vic has been proving me wrong. Real test coming.
No, I still hate the scheme. But he teaches it better than everybody else.
Yeah, he does.
I don't like the bull. I don't like the way people play defense in the NFL now. I mean, I'm talking about my own personal like. I like more aggressive, like most people in Philadelphia, shockingly, because they think I'm against them. I like aggressive defense. I want to impose my will. This defense is based on limiting explosive play. You watch, it's the same defense you've seen for 4 years.
Yeah.
Vic just teaches it better.
I
Now,
think the infusion of young talent can't be overlooked either. I'm not saying
the talent's better.
but John, the thing they do is they're aggressive. They tackle. They attack guys on defensive side. Like, I think that's a big advantage in this defense. I really do.
Well, yeah, when you tackle well, number one, and they didn't tackle as well early in the season. I was just looking at that. They're number 7 in the NFL now when it comes to tackling. So again, it's an era where a lot of teams don't tackle well. So yeah, I mean, when you're giving up underneath stuff, you got to tackle, number one. So when you don't, it looks really bad. And yeah, they've gotten better from a talent perspective, certainly in the secondary, certainly at linebacker. And the defensive front, for all the criticism, is playing one of the best in the league. Everybody still worries about this defensive front before they talk about anything. So all the opposing, I'm talking about the opposing coaches, when they're game planning, when Cliff Kingsbury's game planning, we should talk about Cliff, by the way. He almost got this job, but when he's game planning he's worried about the front. And like, I don't think anybody realizes that it's still the front. It's still the defensive front with the Philadelphia Eagles for everybody else. And they're playing at a high level. It's just not, for whatever reason, because of Bryce Huff and because of the edge rushers, people don't recognize it. That defensive front is a pain in the ass for opposition teams. And that's the engine, and it has been the engine, and it continues to be the engine. But yeah, they're playing off the charts defensively. And part of that, look, the last 5 games, you just mentioned the Giants game, they gave up 112 yards. I'm doing this off under 120 yards of total offense.
Yeah.
And last week was like 145 or something, somewhere in that range. Every other week was under 300. Cincinnati was the best at 280-ish. Everybody, that's unbelievable. They are now second in the NFL. I don't even know who's first. I got to look it up.
I think it's
somebody look that up. Is it Detroit?
No, Chargers. I think it's
Chargers. I don't know. They're second in the NFL. If you would have told me this defense coming into the season, even with antiquated yardage stats, was second in the NFL, I would have laughed at you. Still a long way to go. There's going to be tougher games. They're not giving up 280 yards against Baltimore. I guarantee that. But it's been better than anyone could have expected. But I still don't like the scheme.
It's growing.
I don't like it.
Yeah, it's not my favorite, but it's definitely growing. I mean, I think Vic has these dudes playing. They've really seemed bought in, John, which is a positive. So, but I'm still with you. Abe checks in. Bold take: Steelers versus Eagles in the Super Bowl, a Pennsylvania Bowl. I don't think so, but
that's a bold take. Yeah, I good teams, but I don't think so. I still, I think it was Baltimore, Detroit in the preseason, and I think that's. What I have no reason to skew off that at the moment.
No, in fact, that pick looks very good for you right now. We'll see how it all plays out. We're about 14 likes away, everybody, with 9 minutes left on the show. So we need a
little. I did. Well, I have to admit, I did half-ass because it's embarrassing. So I don't want to run away with it. I did half-ass with the Jets and say, I think maybe the Jets.
Yes, you did. That's right.
I think, but then I eventually geared towards Baltimore. But I said, keep an eye on the Jets. And that was incorrect. So accountability, Nick Sirianni. Accountability.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. 10 likes, everybody, in 8 minutes. Can we do it? I appreciate everybody checking in today. John, you just mentioned you wanted to talk about Cliff Kingsbury. I'm sure we can elaborate it more on tomorrow's show with the full 2-hour slate tomorrow. We'll have Gil and BLG presumably on the show tomorrow. Hey, what do you think of Cliff Kingsbury coming into this game? He's having quite a good year with Jayden Daniels right now.
Yeah, I mean, he was the first guy the Eagles interviewed to be offensive coordinator. And from what I was told, he's probably the leader in the clubhouse, the guy they wanted. And he wanted a little bit too much autonomy when it came to the offensive coaching staff. And at the time, I'm like, that sounds weird. And I think a lot of people went to, well, he doesn't want Jeff Stoutland. I don't think that was the case. But I think he wanted, and as it turns out, if you look at the Eagles coaching staff, and this was a indication that Nick was not neutered from all his power. Because most of his guys on the offensive coaching staff were back and are back. And that goes from Kevin Patullo, who's his right-hand man. I always said that's the key. That's the key one. If they got rid of Kevin Patullo, you knew Nick was completely neutered. And they didn't. But they not only didn't get rid of Kevin Patullo, they didn't get rid of Aaron Moorhead, Jamal Singleton, Jason Michael, obviously Jeff Stoutland. Every major offensive assistant was essentially back. And really, the only one who wasn't was Alex Tanney, who's scapegoated with Brian Johnson. And that was what Kellen Moore was given. He was given his longtime right-hand man, Doug Nussmeier. He was also given a lower-level coach, Kyle Valero, and that was it. Everything else stayed the same.
Good to see Doug was on his game on Sunday because I watched his son get destroyed by the Alabama Crimson Tide on Saturday night.
Yeah. Garrett's a good prospect, though.
Yes,
but,
he is. He didn't have a great game, though, versus the Tide.
No.
Not a great game there for Garrett.
It's funny. When the competition ramps up, you don't have as good of games.
Yeah, that's true, Johnny Mac.
Yeah. So, all those guys were brought back, and that's why I think Cliff didn't get the job. And yeah, obviously people are happy with Kellen Moore, but if you force me to say, I think they wanted Cliff Kingsbury. So I think I think he was the number one choice. Now, Nick was asked about it, and obviously at this stage, he was going to go in the direction that he did, which is, he's got a lot of respect for Cliff, but Kellen was the guy. I'm not so sure that was the case from what I've heard.
Interesting how that played out. Maybe one day we'll get Johnny Mac to delve into what he knows there. I'm sensing that Johnny Mac has some intel that he doesn't want to share.
I definitely have some one-sided intel, but it's one-sided. So, everybody wants their guy to be in the best light. Right. But from what happens and from what I was told, it matches up completely. So when that happens, you start to lean in one direction. And that was, everybody was back. I was told that was the issue, and everybody's back on the Eagles for the most part. So that matched up.
Interesting stuff. Final thoughts here on Birds 365. Let's get to one more super chat from our main man, Devontae. John, I don't know if I tell you or this is on silly. I always tell Devontae, his spelling of the name Devontae is my favorite that I've seen. Not Devonta Smith's, not Devontae Adams is that spelling.
There's too many Devontae spellings. I get them screwed up.
There's so many, but I like this one the best. Devontae. I think it's
now it's going to screw me up. I'm looking at it. I'm going to try to spell Devontae.
Devontae is T-A at the end, I believe. Yeah. Devonta Smith, and he's O-N-T-A, Devonta Smith, I think. and then Devonta Adams.
Devonta Smith has an O, has an A.
They're all messed up. But Devonta, you got the winner, brother. He says, as someone that's from DMV area, Maryland, Commanders fans been talking too much trash. Let's put them in their place. Fly, Eagles, fly. I'll give you a fly, Eagles, fly, Devonta. Appreciate you, brother. We do have to shut them up, John. I'm tired of the Commanders experiment.
Already. You know what I love? I love that rivalries. This rivalry hasn't existed for years. It used to be huge. A lot of fans don't even know how big it used to be when the then Redskins were actually good and Joe Gibbs was winning Super Bowls and it's much closer than Dallas. It's nice to have this rivalry back. I can't criticize Commanders fan. I feel bad. It's been so long. I'm glad they're at least relevant.
Johnny Mac taking it light on the Commanders fan.
I'm happy for them. I'm happy for them. But the Eagles are still better. They got a ways to go. They're still in the process. But Jayden Daniels, like I said, he's going to be a pain in your ass as an Eagles fan for many years, and I'm not going to root for somebody to get injured.
No, me neither. Well, if he keeps this up, no doubt. I mean, he's a good player for sure. Devonta, appreciate you, brother. Appreciate all of our super chats today. We will see how this game goes. I'm looking forward to this game on Thursday night. This might be John, as I sit here a couple days out, this might be the game I'm most excited about so far yet this year. I was excited about a couple early, but I'm excited for this.
Well, yeah, you should. I mean, it's for first place in the NFC East late in the season. It's November, even though it doesn't seem like that. Although it is pretty chilly today. One last thing before we get out of here. Jerry Jones says Dak Prescott is going to undergo surgery, officially out for the season. You know, I was wondering about that knucklehead Jerry Jones. Why they didn't just place Dak on IR before the game and get the extra roster spot. You know, everything helps. And there's the answer. You know, he's got to do it on his radio show to keep the Cowboys in the headlines. That's what he's worried about. He's a freaking knucklehead.
He is a clown. But hey, he's worth 12 or 14.
Great businessman.
Great businessman.
But he is and that points to his business acumen. He keeps this bullshit team in the headlines no matter what, because he does it on purpose.
No doubt. No doubt he does. Good stuff, everybody in the chat. We smashed through our like goal. I'll give Prince the love for that. Prince drops in a no diddy. Love you, bro. Prince, I love you too, man. Thank you for all your support of the channel. James Carver, one more super chat here before we get out of here. John, praying we can minimize the touchdowns Thursday because they ruined hail to the Redskins with
hail to the Redskins was, I agree, James. It was phenomenal.
It was. And now it's hail to the commies. I mean, that's terrible.
I don't want to get in a political bent, but you know, I'm an older guy, and I'll just say this about the term Redskins. I never heard anybody in my entire life use that in a disparaging fashion.
I agree.
And I'm not dismissing other people's beliefs, and if they're offended by it. I can't speak to being a Native American. But if you could take what was once a negative word and turn it into a positive word, because all I heard was, I love the Redskins. Go Redskins from Redskins fans. And, you know, people hated the Redskins.
Many Native Americans, John, that have come out and said, I take no offense to it. I don't know where they got this from.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong. A lot of people hated the Redskins from a fan perspective, but I have never heard, and I'm being completely honest, I've never heard anybody use that in a disparaging fashion to describe a group of people. It was just a football team, and they turned a negative into a positive. And maybe that's why we are where we are, because people get too hyper focused on policing language, and you know, it's the intent behind the language.
I mean, come on, how soft are we?
Words can't hurt you. It's the intent behind the word.
Bring back the Redskins. I'm not even, I mean, come on.
The intent behind that team, or, you know, well, they still do it. And, you know, Florida State and, you know, whatever. Anyway, sorry. I shouldn't have got off on that tangent.
That's all right. I think it's a great
James brought it up. One of the greats theme songs ever, along with the Sixers theme song, which I think is phenomenal.
Yeah, it is good.
The old school Sixers theme song. The Sixers are not phenomenal, but
No. No, they're
10, 9, 8, 76ers, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah,
6,
that's a great song.
phenomenal.
Phenomenal it
song.
is. Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. James, thank you for that super chat, man. You sent John on a tangent, which means that's a W in the super chat. We appreciate that. Even James Jones, John, our resident Commander fan, says he doesn't like the name switch up at all. So most Commanders fans agree. John, we'll let you go. Now you got to get down to NovaCare. Any quick final thoughts on the show today? I thought it was a great conversation, a lot of great chats, a lot of likes.
Yeah, I'm glad we got a game to talk about.
Yeah.
We all speculated last week wasn't going to be much of a game. It turned out it wasn't much of a game. Now we're going to have it's always good when you have a game, an exciting game week, even though it's short. We could have built it up.
I know,
for a Sunday game. Now it's going to be too quick, but it's still better than the alternative.
Yeah, it does stink from that perspective. Great show today, Johnny Mac. Thanks to everybody in the chat. We're up to almost 220 likes. Thank you, guys. That's massive love. Had a big viewership today, so thanks, everybody, for the support. Thanks to Super Chats. Thanks to all of our viewers. Twiz, Flex, Abe, James Carver, Ian East, Shooter McGavin, Andrew Conrad had some good comments today. Brian Fleming always has me laughing. Good stuff. Akbar, I see you, brother. Thanks, everybody. Johnny Mac, great show, man. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Birds 365. All right, brother?
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Catch you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.